Hello and welcome to That's My Story. On this podcast, we talk about individuals' life stories. Not everyone's story plays out the same, and I have always been fascinated to hear life stories. These are stories that shape us as human beings and what make us individuals, and I would like to hear about the moments in life that made you you. How's it going, everybody? I'm your host, George Lugo, and today my guest is Pierce from the Speakeasy Gentlemen, one of my co-hosts. How's it going,
Hello.
Pierce?
It's going pretty good.
That's good. That's good. So, um, where should we begin, Pierce? Let's talk about a little bit where you grew up because I think you and Josh grew up a little bit like in Orange County, right?
Yeah, so we had kind of similar trajectories because we're siblings, but since we have different dads, that kind of changed things up a lot. Um, but there was no real one place that we lived. We probably moved, if not once a year, twice every year of our childhood. We moved, so we were just we were everywhere. But big portion of that we remember at least would be like Orange County. There was a brief period of time we lived in Idaho, and we also lived like around Marina Valley area. I don't know if that's in Orange County. I don't think so.
Morita Valley's in a different county.
Yeah.
How much do you remember from Orange County?
So I remember I remember a little bit when we lived in Garden Grove, which I believe is in Orange County, right?
That's actually where I live right now.
Yeah.
In Garden Grove, yeah.
So we lived there a little bit, and I remember like a little bit of like preschool. I remember getting the chicken pox. I remember stuff like that, and then from there we were in Marina Valley. It's all really blurry to me because that's when I was really young. Josh remembers it a lot better. But what I really remember is when we left Idaho and came back to Orange County, and I was in kindergarten. And we lived in Anaheim, around like really close to Anaheim Plaza.
Mm-hmm.
And we would walk to school pretty much every day. We would walk to school until Josh and my older sister Jessica started going to middle school and high school. Then my mom started driving them out there. It was a little bit farther, but I mainly went to Price Elementary and Westmont Elementary. Okay. Westmont was interesting because they built a school. I don't know if you know about this, but they built a school right next to an existing school because I guess there was a lot of it was just growing and growing and growing. And so what they ended up doing is they ended up sending like the smarter kids to Westmont. Huh. So there was like a stereotype thing that like if you went to Westmont, you were nerdy, and if you went to Price, you were dumb. So
there's no middle ground apparently. It's just you're smart or stupid.
There's no middle ground. But there was plenty of dumb people at Westmont.
Yeah.
But so it was a weird thing. So like if you were in the gifted classes, they sent you to Westmont. So in second grade, I moved to Westmont, but you still have all your friends from like Price Elementary, so you would hang out with them. Like after school, everyone kind of congregate like in between, I guess. But it was really interesting. But Westmont was so much nicer, and it was new.
Oh, so that was cool. That's what I was going to ask is, since you bounced around a lot growing up, I mean, what exactly is it like developing friendships? Is it like...
So pretty much every time I moved somewhere, I always had one close friend that I latched onto for pretty much every year. And other than that, like you wouldn't really get to know people as much. Like, and it was always weird. You're always the new kid. So everyone always looked at you funny. Everyone always treated you differently. Like, oh, it's a new kid. It's a new kid. So like everywhere you go, you're just used to nobody knowing you and having to start over from scratch. So you don't really invest too much in people. But I always had, like I said, one good friend that I usually had. And like the sad part about it is pretty much every like best friend that I've had over the years, I don't talk to anymore. So it's like, and it's not that I haven't tried, because I've actually reached out to a few of them. I've like looked up what they're doing. It's just like they've changed so much and I've changed so much. I don't know if that's normal, but I know a lot of people like grow up in school and like have the same friends they had from school. Like I don't know what that's like at all. I'm just used to like moving on and not forming attachments with people.
For sure. Man, that actually sounds incredibly rough.
Yeah, but when you're a kid, you don't really think about it. Like the hard part is like being new, and it's like it's awkward. It's awkward meeting new people, and you kind of feel like weird and out of place a bit. But also you also get good at, just going with the flow. You get used to going with emotions, and you kind of become a pro at it, I guess.
Okay. I'm just a little curious because I have a couple friends that are a little similar, bounce around a lot, and
Hmm.
their biggest issue with it was creating friendships and then keeping those friendships because they're kind of like very social, you know.
Hmm.
So it would be hard to move from city to city and then try to maintain those relationships as you grow up, and then like during adolescence, that's kind of like when we start to find ourselves and we don't, and we keep changing, you know. I'm not
Yeah.
the same person I was when I was like 10, 11, 12, 13 to now, you know, obviously.
Right.
um so that's interesting, you know.
Yeah, it is. I always like I was really good at finding people that were like-minded to me. So I pretty distinctly remember like the people that became my best friends at the time. I probably met them like within a day. Like I knew my type of people. Like I can think like probably like more recently is like high school. The first day of high school, I went into band practice, and I was the new kid. And the funny thing about being in band is like there's chairs, and it's usually based on seniority and skill. So when you come in there, you fuck everything up. Like you're like a new kid, and you're like, so there's like a first through sixth chair for saxophone. You come in, and like for me, I always wanted to be first chair. So like I would come into different schools and basically kick people out of the spot they thought they had for sure. So a lot of people didn't like me for that. But I happened to meet a really, really gifted musician who still does music to this day, and he was the first chair. And the second chair was a girl that I ended up dating. She was my first girlfriend, and so
Nice.
I was kind of like second, third chair, and she was really gifted as well. But I was moving like second, third chair. And anyway, my point is the first chair became like one of my best friends at the time
Mhm.
until high school ended, and I never really talked to him again.
Oh, that's
And
kind of cool.
speaking on those friendships is I was working at Starbucks like part time for a while, and um, I went to like these management seminars they had so that I could maybe think about becoming one of the shift managers. Um, and I went to the seminar, and I saw that guy that was my best friend in high school. He was doing the same thing as me. He was trying to become a manager and he's still doing music on the side. And I saw him, and like this is someone like I hung out with every day for a year. Went to their house, met their family, knew their whole backstory, and it was just so weird because like I was excited to see him. I was like, hey, what's up? And he was just like, oh, hey, what's up? Like wasn't a big deal. Like, hey, the guy that was your best friend for a whole year, and we haven't talked in so long. It's kind of
Mhm.
weird, and that happens a lot. It's just really weird coming back to that. And like I guess they went on with their lives and their trajectory, and they just like never thought about me again. And whereas like I still think about all the people that were my best friends, because those were like impactful moments in my life. And then he ended up working at the same store as me for a while, and we
Okay.
never like reconnected or never talked about the past really. It was
Oh,
just like all just like he was like my coworker, like that like a casual
oh,
coworker I never
he's
met.
like just became an acquaintance. You didn't rekindle that friendship.
Basically. And like, and yeah, it's so weird to so weird how that happens when you're someone like me who ended up moving around a lot.
That's interesting. I'm a little worried about that because like like I'm kind of like a gypsy. I move around a lot. I think since we started the Speakeasy show, I've been in like 4 or 5 different apartments.
Wow.
And I'm like, I think I need to like figure out something so that way like I don't want to like rob that of like Logan. Like if he's creating friends and stuff, like I want him to have those friends. 'Cause I had that growing up. I grew up at my parents' house, and I basically met 2 of my best friends that ever, and in kindergarten, and I'm great friends with to this day. Like I've actually talked to one. He was my previous guest, and it's rough, because I understand like some people don't have that, that connection, someone that they've known all the way since like elementary school, and it's not easy. It's also not for everyone, but if I can somewhat like give my son a chance for that, I want to try, so I'm thinking about not moving around as much. I need to like figure something out,
Yeah, and it's been the same for me, and it's interesting because I moved in with my girlfriend, I guess a couple years now. I don't know. I'm terrible with dates. That's the other thing. When you move around like I did, you don't keep track of days. You're just used to going with the flow, and that affects me today, where I still don't think about dates as much as other people. Like for the longest time, I didn't even know when holidays were. Like probably until a few years ago, I didn't know like when holidays are, and I still don't really know. Like if you ask me like right now when Christmas is, I just know it's December. Like I don't know the exact day. So
you don't know Jesus's birthday.
So it's weird because you get used to that. So now like when people ask me like, oh, like, when did you do this? Like I don't remember exactly when. So I moved in, I'm guessing a couple years ago to this place. Or not to this place, to the other place we had, and then we moved here. But when we moved here, I perfectly expected to leave here after a year, after the lease was up. It's like that's when you go, right? Your lease is up, you go. And my girlfriend had a different kind of upbringing where she kind of stayed in the same place a lot more. She moved a few times, but not like I did, like every year. And she was like, "No, why don't we just stay here? Like we like it, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I do like it here. Maybe I should stay here another year."
You're like, that's an option?
Yeah, it's weird.
Stay?
It's weird. It's so weird. So this is the longest I've ever stayed in a place because I stayed past the initial lease. So This is kind of like becoming my home. But eventually, but now I'm of the attitude like, okay, I do kind of want to settle down somewhere when I'm ready, but not now. You have kids, that's a different story. It might be better to settle down just for their sake.
Yeah, that's been like a big issue that I've been trying to figure out, let's talk about your job with are you still doing anything with NASA, or is that kind of like subsided?
So it's an internship, and it's a semester by semester basis. So the way I got recruited was I was taking a coding class, and we were in this. Someone ended up making a Discord server just for like homework help, and so we could help each other out. And I had been kind of practicing on my own learning to code before I went back to school. So I just kind of wanted to get a little bit of head start. And people would always ask questions in there. And just to get more practice for myself, I would help other people out and try to, help them do their homework. So everyone was having trouble on this one assignment, and I told everyone how I did it. And then I got to talking with this one guy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's really clever how you did it." And he was kind of asking me about my thought process. And a few weeks later, like when the semester was about to end, he messaged me about this opportunity. He's like, "Hey, would you be interested in an internship? We're trying to recruit people on the coding side of things," because they originally, so the whole project is they construct a payload that gets attached to a weather balloon. and then they send that out into the stratosphere. We collect data, and it's supposed to simulate a NASA development cycle, like sending something to Mars, sending something to the moon. It replicates that whole cycle, except we're just going to the stratosphere, so it's a lot less investment. But there is still a budget, and there's still cost to it, and there's a lot of interesting tech involved. So what they do right now is they have mechanical servos that they built that have a dish that points and follows the payload as it travels throughout the sky, and it goes miles away from where we launch it. And there's some rudimentary code that they did, and so now they're expanding this team for our school, and they want to expand it to include more of the coding aspect of things, because it's a bit of a competition between schools. So everyone has their squad from each school that coordinates with NASA, and there's a NASA coordinator that works with you, and everyone's trying to one up each other, because we can do whatever we want. We can send like a payload out there, and like one team, they did something with mosquitoes to see how like mosquitoes react in the atmosphere. So that's what they're studying, and so they're kind of relating it to their field of study. So our team is kind of doing a lot because we actually have a video feed. So that's a big deal, is like being able to capture the entire flight of the payload is a big deal. But the coding is like needs a lot of work. So that's where they're like trying to find new people. So he kind of saw how my thought process was on that other stuff, and he talked to me about it and asked if I was interested. And then I got into touch with the coordinator and had an interview with them that lasted like 2-3 hours. And yeah, and I was mostly just helping out. All this stuff behind me, by the way, is stuff that they gave me to like tinker with. And between you and me and everyone watching, it goes above my head. Like I'm good with the software stuff and the coding stuff, but like you asked me to tinker with like breadboards and stuff. Like I don't know what's going on, and they were showing it to me, but in my heart of hearts, it's not as interesting to me. Like I like coding stuff, and that's where I wanted to really shine and get practice. Is I want to do some cool stuff with that, and all this stuff like. I mean, I tried it. I learned to solder. I learned a few things, but it's just not my strength, and it's not my like main interest. So it's summer now, so there's no launch. So I have the summer to kind of figure out what I'm going to do, and then the next semester is going to come, and they're going to interview me again to see if they want me to be like a full-time member. And they were talking to me about maybe like leading the team at some point.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's like. But I mean, in my head, back of my head, I'm thinking about all this stuff. Like how am I going to lead this team if like I know the coding stuff, I don't know what anyone else is doing. Like because everyone has their own expertise. We have different sub teams on our team, where some people are in charge of the video feed, and some people are in charge of the coding, and there's like 6 teams. So I only really know a small portion of what my team does, and it's the coding stuff. So we'll see how that goes and what I'm going to do. But,
okay.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So what is it like doing like creating code? I've never even attempted or like read into it. It was like
well, it used to be so before everything, it was just zeros and ones, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that doesn't make any sense to anybody just looking at it.
Yeah.
And then from there, they created something called assembly language, which is like basic instructions that you give a computer that converts into binary. And that binary is what runs the computer, what the computer understands.
Okay.
And from there, they constructed some basic computer languages, which convert into assembly, which convert into binary. So nowadays, we have really cool languages like Python. And what Python does is you basically it's closer and closer to just speaking English and telling the computer what to do. So programming has become easier in a sense.
Okay.
But essentially, is you're telling the computer what to do. So if I tell the computer something as simple as print hello, and I'll literally type that out, print, and then hello in parentheses. Then it will pop up with a message thing that says hello. And that's as basic as it is now. In older languages, you would have to jump through hoops just to get something simple like that.
Okay.
And I know some of those more rudimentary languages, but not as much. I prefer coding in, obviously, the more recent languages because the development time is so much faster. If I can just tell it what to do and it does it, then I'm good. And,
that sounds like a good quality of life change. Like why go back to like an older system?
Reason you'd want to go back is because when you break it all down, it still goes back to zeros and ones.
Oh, it still goes to binary.
And so if I have an issue that I cannot solve in Python, which is like a newer language, then the only way I can solve that issue is by going deeper.
Is by digging all the way down.
So there will always people who know assembly really well, which is right above binary, they probably make like they're in high demand, or they probably make bank because they're specialists basically. Other people can't really do that. A good example of when I had to kind of expand my horizons a little bit is I made a Tetris AI, and what it did was it would read the screen and it would detect like a pixel on the screen, the color of that pixel, and that would tell it which piece it was because there's 7 pieces in Tetris.
Yeah.
And from there, it would do some stuff under the hood to figure out where it should place that piece. So it was an AI that played Tetris. And I wanted it to be faster than humans. And humans are really, really fast at Tetris now.
Yes, they are, including you.
Yes. and I wanted to be faster than me for sure. And so I would do this. I would run my program, and it would read the pixel. It would figure out where to place it, and it was slow. It was very slow. And so I did some research on what I could do, and I basically figured out if I wanted it to be any better, I'd have to learn C++ a little bit better, which is a lower level language. Lower means closer to binary, not necessarily like worse. Okay. So lower means really higher in case of programming. So it was a lower level language, and it basically it's more directly translating into the computer language, so it's faster. It was 200 times faster. So I recoded the entire thing in C++, and I did this in about a day. So it maybe took me like 6 to 8 hours because I had to relearn how to do all the things in that language. And I ran it not knowing what would happen. Like I had no idea what would happen. Things go wrong anywhere in your code. It's like imagine giving someone instructions to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they've never made one before. If you mess up one instruction, you're going to walk in and you're going to be like, what is this? And it's going to be like a mushed up bread with some peanut butter on it, right?
Yeah.
You have to give very specific and correct instructions. Well, I ran it and it worked, and it was like blazing fast, and I was like, my mind was blown. so I that's when you kind of learn the appreciation for the lower level languages. But I still prefer to code in Python because it's easier.
That's pretty awesome. Thanks for breaking it down so I can kind of understand it.
Hopefully I broke that down well enough that it wasn't too complicated.
No, that was good. That was good. So what do you think is like a life experience or like a story that occurred in your I guess adolescence or maybe early 20s that kind of made you who you are today?
There's a lot of those, but I would say taking philosophy.
Okay.
So when I got into college, I grew up extremely religious, and I mean that like as literally as possible. I was very, very religious.
Did you guys do Catholic or Christian?
So it was an offshoot of Christianity.
Okay.
And it was you go to church twice a week type of religion, and I was probably spending maybe 16 to 20 plus hours at least a week going to church. I was an organist. I was a choir member. So at the most at the peak that I was going to church, I would go to church on Sunday. I would arrive. I'd wake up like 6 o'clock, and I lived across the street from church, so I would walk to church. I'd arrive at like 6:45, do a choir drill because I was in charge of the choir. They would do a vocal drill, and that would last like 10 minutes, and then we would play like an intermission before all the people were coming to church. So I was there for that whole thing. Like as soon as the doors were open and everyone was coming in, I do that. Listen through the whole service, and then the service would end, and then there was an 11 o'clock service, and then so I'd stick around for that, do the drill again for that. Then that was done. When that was done, there'd be choir practice. Actually, no. Before I even get there, there was a children's service.
Oh, Jesus.
And there weren't a lot of hands readily available, and there was a lot of times where I had to fill in. So I was in charge of the children's service during that time. Okay, and then after that, 2 o'clock would come, and then there would be the practices for the children's service and for the adult service, and I would lead those. And then there was another congregation that was like a parallel to us. They were trying to get their own chapel and stuff, but they didn't have an organist yet. So who was their organist? I was. So their service started at 5. So at 4 o'clock, I'd do it all over again. Do the drill, and then 5 o'clock, the service, and then their practices that I would do. Okay, and that was just Sunday.
Damn.
Then on Tuesday, that congregation had a practice for their Wednesday service, which I also played in. And then I did their Tuesday practice, and then I'd do their Wednesday practice, or their Wednesday service, and then I'd play for their service. And then my congregation had 2 services on Thursday. One was at 5:30 in the morning. So I'd wake up at 4 a.m., do the drill, play that service, go home, take a nap, wake up, do their night service. And then lastly, Saturday, right before Sunday, and I started all over again, there was another practice for the children and the adults. And I did that for years.
Jeez.
And I'd play weddings, and I'd play any of the special worship services. But I will say, as an organist, I was damn good.
Damn good.
I was really good. There was like several people, but they would always like request me to play for their weddings because I mean, I love music, so that was the enjoyable part of the whole thing, and that's what kind of kept me sane. Is I did not mind playing music, and I wanted to go and become a preacher eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So I when I was going to school, I was like, hey, I'll take some philosophy, and I always had like questions about religion, but I thought to myself, you can only become stronger in what you believe, or your mind will change if you learn more. So I wanted to learn more, so I did learn more and more and more. Yeah. And so what ended up being that big experience for me is I took a philosophy of religion class, and the first day I came in, the professor said, today we're going to prove the existence of God. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, like got me hooked. And then the first week go by, and like I listened to all the arguments, and I was like, damn, that was pretty convincing, and like I feel good now. Then the next week came in, he said, today I'm going to prove that God does not exist. And I'd hear the argument, and I was like, shit, this is a good argument. Like, I'm kind of questioning myself now. Then third week comes, back to today I'm going to prove God exists. And he did that the entire semester. And the whole time I was just going through an existential crisis because I, was raised religious, and it was everything to me. It was my life's purpose. And and he would never share his personal thoughts. He would just say, I'm just teaching you guys history. This is what people have done in the past. These are people that, like, old philosophers that, proved God's existence, and ones that didn't. St. Thomas Aquinas, everybody's opinion on God from early first century, second century stuff, the Greek stuff, all the way until now. And the last day he opened up for questions. He's like, okay, now you guys can ask me personal questions if you want. And I asked him, I said, do you believe in God? Because we spent this whole semester and you were giving us all these convincing arguments, and I'm like, now I know like you're super informed about this, and I need to know what you think,
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, I don't believe in God. He said, if there is a God out there, I see no evidence for it. So why would I believe in something I don't have evidence for? And I was like, shit. And it wasn't, obviously, I didn't just take his word for it. I thought about all the arguments he presented, and I did more research, and I took more classes. Ended up majoring in philosophy because of it. And eventually I came to my own conclusion that, I don't believe God exists. And so that was probably like one of the biggest defining and biggest changes for me in my life, is that I went from living my whole life for that and living now my whole life for me and my own personal goals. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Religious Pierce.
A lot of people know me like that.
Really?
Yeah, like a lot of people in my life. Most of the people that were my friends, the people that that was like the one thing that was constant with me, because no matter where I moved, I went to the same church. So those were the people that I knew for years.
Okay, so there was some definite people in your life that were constant and always there.
Yep, and now all those people think I'm going to hell. So.
Oh, that's funny. Oh man. So, since you said you majored in philosophy, so were you not going to use that for anything else later in life, or are you going to use that for something?
Well, truly the reason I majored in it is because I needed to know, and it was so important to me to know, and I wasn't really thinking about like, where is this going to take me career-wise. Okay. But I ended up double majoring. So I ended up majoring in communication as well. And I majored in that because when I was younger, I was like very, very reclusive and extremely shy. I couldn't talk to anybody, couldn't talk in front of anybody. And I remember in high school, I did take a public speaking class, and there was a time where I had to give a speech, and I like completely froze and I couldn't give it, and I like walked out. And I was like, and then the teacher of that class pulled me aside and like, tried to like kind of counsel me about it. And she gave me like a lot of good advice. And she was telling me like, you have to get over these things or you won't be able to live your life. And I was like, shit. So when it came time for college, I decided like, okay, I'm challenging myself mentally in this like philosophical way. Mm-hmm. And I was also thinking like, shit, like I need to learn how to do better, like talking to people and things like that. So I took public speaking. I took like small group communication. I took a lot of communication classes, and I ended up choosing it as a major. Ended up giving like tons of speeches, tons of public speaking stuff, and I became a lot more comfortable with it over time. So I majored in things that I thought would help me with life skills, not necessarily find me a job. So when I was done with that, you can imagine I didn't know what I was going to do for work, because I just did these things to improve my life. And so I was like, now I'm ready for life. Now what do I do? So I ended up working in the service industry. I moved up into management, did pretty well there. And when I was done with school, my brother hit me up for some management opportunities. Went into that, and I hated it. I was, working long hours in a job I did not like, and everyone was against me. Like the first day I showed up, my first day working ever there, I was told by another manager at the same level as me that everything that's wrong there is my fault. Unironically, like they believe this. Like, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to fix? Because you're not doing a good job. I'm like, I just arrived.
It's my first day.
Yeah, but that's how I was treated the entire time I was there. I worked in a small town where everybody knew each other. All the management were buddy, and I was once again the outsider.
The outsider, yeah.
And the people that worked for me grew to like me a lot, and I actually made like good friendships there. But the people in the management level had a very strong dislike for me because I did my best to like just do things the right way, because if nobody's gonna like me, I'm just gonna do what I'm supposed to do, what my job is. So I did my best to do that. I was harassed. I was actually like followed on my breaks, so people could like, they were trying to find dirt on me, like that kind of stuff. And at one point, I was brought to the office, and a manager showed me pictures of me on my break, and they were asking what I was doing, and I had no idea anybody was following me, taking pictures of me.
That's
and
like a violation of privacy. Like, I'm on my break.
Yes, it's a violation of my privacy. It's my break. It's my business, what I do. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not doing anything against company policy. And the whole reason was that they wanted to prove that I use my phone, because they were calling me while I was working and I wasn't answering. And I told them, well, when I'm working, I don't use my phone. And so they followed me on my break to see if I'd use my phone on my break. And they said, "Ha, got you. You were using your phone." And it wasn't. I was playing a Nintendo Switch with one of my coworkers. And they thought the Switch was my phone. My phone was sitting in my pocket, still on silent, still off.
Right.
But it's my break.
Big ass phone that you're using.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So I called corporate for that incident and other incidents as well. And I called the number, and they said, did you speak about this with your direct manager? And I said, they are my direct manager. They're the ones that took this picture. And then they said, are you sure it's against company policy? And I said, doesn't matter if this is against company policy. I was followed on my break, surveilled, pictures were taken of me, and then used against me.
Yeah.
And I was not doing anything against policy.
Right.
And that was being used against me. So they didn't do anything, and they ended up getting the market HR involved. And the market HR knows all the managers very well because they visit all the time and they have good rapport with them. And so the market resource manager came and gave a conversation to me, and they told me, they said, Pierce, I just want to make sure you're being a team player. Do you know what it means to be a team player? And I said, I want to make sure you understand why you're here, because my privacy was violated. What does this have to do with me being a team player? I can guarantee you I'm a team player, but what does my privacy being violated have to do with that? So no, you're right. But I just want to make sure you understand. Do you know what it means to be a team player? That was how that conversation went.
Jesus.
Didn't even receive an apology. Didn't receive an apology, nothing. And there was so many more moments like this. There was moments where my life was put in danger.
Oh shit.
Like I was made to operate machinery that I didn't know how to operate. I was basically being hazed. I was basically being hazed by management, by people on my level and people above me. And I always had, like, I was constantly being watched. Like everything I did was watched. I wasn't allowed to any sort of break. And even on my lunch, I was harassed. You know, besides the pictures, I would get like radioed, I'd get called, things like that. And other people, they would go drinking on their breaks. Nobody would care about that. They'd have smoke breaks. I don't smoke. Every other manager smokes. They would get dozens of smoke breaks a day. And if I stopped for even a second, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? They would go on lunches all together. Every single member of management go on lunches together. I would have no clue about it. No one would tell me. And mind you, like, I'm not being mean to these people. I'm trying to like build relationships with them.
Yeah.
And everything. And that's how they treated me. They made me climb a 20-foot ladder and carry a box twice as big as me.
Oh shit.
And I was not allowed help. I asked for help. I said, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't feel safe doing that.
Yeah, that's not safe.
Maybe we can find somebody to either do it for me that is really good at it, because I don't know how I'm supposed to do this, or somebody that can help me. And no, you don't need any help. You should be able to do this. It's like, okay. But another day, I spent 7 hours putting up Easter baskets as a salaried member of management, as like some sort of punishment. I was made to put up Easter baskets all day. And I said, I have no problem doing this. I've worked for a minimum wage. I have no problem doing this. My issue here is you're paying me to be a manager, and I'm not able to oversee any of my employees. I'm not able to help them. I'm not able to help any part of the store that I'm responsible for financially. Like, I was responsible for millions of dollars worth of the store, and I had no say over any of that. I was just putting up Easter baskets. So that was my issue. Not that I don't mind putting up. That's easy, you know. If you want me to do that for 8 hours and make as much as I was making, I'm fine with that. But who's going to watch over the people that rely on me? So, needless to say, I was in a crisis, and I did not know what to do. I was like, man, I went to school. I didn't really, plan for all this. I hate this. I've worked in other service industry jobs. I didn't enjoy them that much, but this is like the worst. And I was just thinking, like, I feel like I'm around people that just don't get it. They don't get me. They don't get what should be happening. They don't understand how things should be run. And so either I need to move up or I need to move out. And so I pulled one of the managers who was like more neutral and kind of on my side a bit. And I pulled him aside and I said, look, I'm thinking of leaving. I think I should just go back to school because this is not working for me. I'm doing as much as I can and I'm not having success. So, and he was really understanding about that and kind of gave me his blessing.
Okay.
So I took a big risk and decided to quit, and I went back to school. So now I'm going back to school for now stuff that I'm like already good at, because I went and I studied stuff that I was not good at. I wasn't good at speaking. I wasn't good at like critical thinking. And now I'm going back for math and computers and stuff that have always been a strength of mine, and stuff that I've always felt like maybe I didn't have the skill or intelligence to do. So my whole idea was like, what can I accomplish if I apply myself? So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I've had struggles of late, but I'm more than halfway done for my bachelor's. And when I do finish, there are a lot of jobs available for this kind of stuff. And
that's good.
I could work as an engineer. I could work in computers. There's a lot of flexibility where I can go. And I think I'll be probably happier, around more like-minded individuals, people like me, people nerdy, I guess, people who like computers, and maybe I'll be able to deal with people better there. But there's always a fear in the back of my mind, like, what if I just hate people? But I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I think I'm a very personable person. I think I'm nice to people. I like people. I think that I've just been in shitty situations. So that's what I like to think.
Yeah, I think it was just a shitty situation, Pierce, because you're not like, you're easy to get along with, Yeah. I understand you kind of do keep to yourself, but you do care like what other people think and what other people are doing. So
yeah,
I think that was just a bad situation. I'm glad you got out of it and just moving forward.
Yeah, it's still nightmare fuel for me, but but I'm out of the situation. So yeah, and I think I'm on a good trajectory. Hopefully, things are gonna look up for me. I mean, my girlfriend is really successful in her field, so that's a big thing for me because she already works as an engineer. So like that's a comfort for me, because before I lived with her, it was just me on my own struggling, and like anytime I took a risk, that was all on me. Like, what was gonna go on? But now I have some support system at least.
Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, I kind of rambled on that question.
No, man, that's good. That's kind of what this is about. It's about hearing everything that helped you become the person you are, and events that are just happening just in real time. So that's been pretty. It's been, man, that's awesome, Pierce. There's some cool stories in there, and I feel like I know you a little bit better now. Like, because we've only met, I think, once in person.
Yeah, we've
But-
only met once in person. And that was on our, Happy Go Lucky podcast.
Yeah. And but I mean, we see each other every week, but it's just like
Yeah.
it's different, you know.
Doesn't always go that deep.
It doesn't always go that deep now. But yeah, man, thanks for sharing all that with me, and and with all of us. That's fucking awesome.
For sure.
Do you have anything you want to promote, or you want to?
Speakeasy Gentlemen, check that out.
I guess, right? Yeah, Speakeasy Gentlemen, Thursdays at 8.
So I've always wanted to start my own podcast too, like kind of like what you have, or something internet related, but I've never had any inclination on like what exactly I want to do. So I'm still waiting for the inspiration to come to my mind. So we'll see what I have in the future. But anyone watching, you guys can follow me on Speakeasy Gentlemen for now.
Let's keep it at that. Oh, we have a game coming up, or games that we're supposed to battle each other pretty soon. I think we should probably do that. Well, maybe when you said you're coming to California.
Yeah, I'm coming to California. I have a pretty booked schedule.
Okay.
I had to shorten it one day just for make it a little bit cheaper.
Okay. Well, okay. We could always I could just capture the whole thing, and then we can just put it up or whatever. But we should do that soon. Yeah, we should do that too. Have you been playing at all?
No, I haven't been playing anything. Pokemon Snap. Yeah.
Oh,
we can see who takes better pictures, I guess.
Right. I finally picked up my Switch the other day, and I got to play a little bit, and I was like, "Fuck, I haven't played anything in so long." And I'm like, I should be playing Smash Brothers, and I should be playing like Street Fighter, just brush up. And I'm like, I haven't done either of those. It's gonna be interesting. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks, Pierce, for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.